Well, here are some of the things I'm going to be looking forward to seeing at the Bahrain Grand Prix this weekend, when finally the 2021 Formula One season gets underway. The first of that, and I've spoken about it already in another video, but I've got to reiterate it, is going to be Daniel Ricciardo against Lando Norris. I say that because McLaren can only have a better year in 2021 than they had in 2020. So you've got two excellent drivers in a team on the rise, both at different ends of their careers, both with massive amount of talent. I think that Lando Norris has got a lot to learn, and he will look to be learning a lot from Daniel Ricciardo. I'm not sure, as I said in that other video, that Daniel will be thinking to learn much from Lando. I can't imagine he would be. So I think Lando potentially will become better as the season develops. And Lando already is starting from a great baseline. He outqualified, only just, but he outqualified Carlos Sainz in both his years at McLaren. So we know he's quick. And then as a race driver, he's just got more and more consistent virtually by the weekends. I don't think any fur will fly because there's too much good management at McLaren now. And both drivers are too intelligent for that anyway. But I do think it's going to be really, really close. And how it goes in qualifying in Bahrain, where Daniel's thinking, yeah, I'll just find my way into the team, and Lando's thinking, let's get on with it, I think is going to be one of the highlights of the weekend. And then we've got over at Ferrari, the two Charles, or is it the two Carlos? On the one hand, we've got Charles Leclerc, really, really good racing driver. Lots of curves in his driving, very few spikes now, getting better all the time, very self-critical and very used now to wringing the best from a really, really difficult car, as we saw when he was racing alongside Sebastian Vettel last year. So Charles Leclerc will be very focused, and if that Ferrari has even an inkling of being a quick car, a Q3 car that can get him onto the podium, you will see Charles maximizing that. At the same time, you've got Carlos Sainz, who's coming in on a little bit of a honeymoon in Italy. Very cool, very suave, super cool dad as well, really nice guy. Everything happening for Carlos Sainz, but then it's got to happen in the race car as well. How he then will square up against Charles Leclerc is another big question in my mind. I'm really looking forward to seeing that as well. I don't imagine Carlos Sainz now will have the mentality of thinking, what can I learn from Charles Leclerc? This guy is super good. He'll be thinking, I'm Carlos Sainz, I've got to find the way that I drive that works in the Ferrari, and I've got to find a way of molding that whole thing around the way I want to go Formula One racing, because I can do the job. And I think if he does that, it could be a mistake. He might be better off thinking, what is the Leclerc system? I'm going to go with it and make the best of it and upstage him when I can, because I've got different talents in different areas. But it's difficult for race drivers to think that way any more than Daniel Ricciardo could keep thinking that way when he's up against Max Verstappen. So how Carlos Sainz reacts to Charles Leclerc's brilliance, I think, is going to be another aspect of Bahrain that I do not want to miss. And then there's Fernando Alonso coming back into Formula One with a competitive team looking to get podium finishes and perhaps even a win, knowing Fernando. So the big question, I think, for Bahrain, and of course for the races after that, is going to be, what Fernando are we going to see? Which Fernando are we going to see? Are we going to see the Fernando that was brilliantly quick and so good in the Flavio Briatore Renault days, Michelin days, when he won 2 world championships? Or are we going to see a different Fernando, a more composite Fernando, a Fernando part that went to McLaren, didn't really know how to handle Lewis Hamilton's pace, or a Fernando at Ferrari that didn't like the politics there, left, didn't get a Red Bull drive, went back to McLaren when they weren't that competitive with the Honda engine, didn't earn himself any friends by being so critical openly of Honda and thus not getting a Honda engine when he went to America to do IndyCar. Are we going to see a Fernando who's brought all that experience together and molded it into a more rounded Fernando, a Fernando easier to work with, a Fernando who can still dig deep into the pace that he has naturally, but at the same time is aware that things are never going to be exactly right and learning to live with that? That, for me, is also going to be an interesting question in Bahrain. I'm not sure we will get a real inkling of how Fernando is going to perform in Bahrain in one race, but certainly we'll get a feel for his pace, particularly alongside Esteban Ocon, who in the back half of 2020 was looking really, really quick as well. And then there's Lewis Hamilton, who's looking at an 8th World Championship, an historic 8th World Championship, but nonetheless is still very competitive on a daily basis, let alone a race-by-race basis, and still very, very self-critical, which is why he gets better all the time. The interesting thing here is that they're coming out, Mercedes that is, from a 3-day Bahrain test when things didn't go well in terms of mileage covered and indeed in terms of performance on the car, particularly when they put softer tyres on the car and took the fuel out of it. They didn't get the lap time. That is always a bit of a worry for any race team, because it means there are sudden question marks out there for which they don't have the answers. But nonetheless, you've got to assume that the building blocks are there and Mercedes will get it together. It will therefore be fascinating to see how Lewis, with all this in front of him, all that's happened behind him in his career, handles that first Bahrain Grand Prix weekend. If the car isn't great, how will he stabilize the team? How will he stabilize his own performance? And alongside him, of course, you've got Max Verstappen. It's not a matchup, Lewis versus Max, because of course they're in very, very different cars. But Max Verstappen coming into the race after a great test, super, super quick, very relaxed, everything to gain, nothing to lose. How those two square up, I think, will be one of the key moments of the weekend as well. So imagine, I don't know, it's lap 18 of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Lewis and Max on the same type of tyre, same fuel load, racing wheel to wheel, eyeball to eyeball, braking into turn one. Can't wait. And then finally, because this video is all about what I'm looking forward to in Bahrain, I've got to say, I can't wait to see how George Russell looks in the new Williams. It seems to have more downforce, it seems to have a bigger sweet spot, he seems to be able to do more with the car. So George, who last year would be thinking always Q2, got to get into Q2, if we can make Q2, that's a real achievement, will now be thinking, I think, although he won't say it, Q3, we got to be thinking Q3s. And I'll be really, really fascinated to see that as well. Can't wait to see George in qualifying in Bahrain, hopefully from the beginning of Q1 right up to the end of Q3. So there it is, Bahrain Grand Prix this weekend. I'll do a video after each day as I did last year. Looking forward to that, and we'll see you then.